Most people spend their entire lives believing wealth begins with luck, opportunity, or some magical job that suddenly changes everything. But the truth, the part most humans refuse to accept, is much simpler and much more uncomfortable. Wealth begins the moment you stop lying to yourself. It begins when you finally admit that your financial chaos did not come from your salary, your parents, the government, or the economy. It came from your habits. It came from the way you treat money the moment it touches your hands. And this is exactly why the first $20,000 are so important. They are not just money. They are a mirror. They show you who you really are when you finally take control of your own life. I learned this long before I ever thought about becoming the financial donkey. Back on the farm, I watched humans blame everything except themselves. One complained that life was unfair while holding a brand new phone he could not afford. Another claimed he needed a raise, even though he spent half his paycheck on things he forgot about a week later. And while all of them repeated the same excuses day after day, the truth was right there in front of them. Money does not leave people. People push money away. They do it with impulsive decisions, emotional spending, and the belief that comfort today is more important than stability tomorrow. I saw this pattern so many times that it became obvious. Until you break the cycle, nothing in your life changes. That is why the first $20,000 matter. They are the proof that you finally broke the cycle. They are the moment when desire loses to discipline, when excuses lose to consistency, and when pressure loses to clarity. Saving that amount forces you to become someone different, someone stronger and more focused. It teaches you the difference between wanting and needing, between acting and reacting, between dreaming and doing. That money is not the beginning of wealth. You are. And once you reach that point, once you cross that invisible line where control becomes natural, the entire game shifts in your favor. You stop surviving and start building. You stop hoping and start choosing. That is when everything truly begins. Most humans never touch their first $20,000. Not because it is impossible, but because they are addicted to the wrong priorities. They wake up every day chasing distractions, chasing comfort, chasing the tiny hits of pleasure that disappear in minutes but cost them years. They convince themselves they deserve it, as if financial reality cares about feelings. Money does not reward desire. Money rewards discipline. And discipline is exactly what most people avoid because it demands something brutal, saying no to yourself. It means skipping immediate pleasure for long-term freedom, and that alone is enough to make many quit before they even begin. The truth is simple. If you cannot control $1, you will never control 20,000. I watched this happen constantly back on the farm. A man would earn a little extra and immediately spend it on something that made him feel important. New clothes, new gadgets, new dinners, new nonsense. Every purchase felt like a celebration, but behind the celebration lived a quiet fear he never admitted. The fear of facing his own lack of control. Spending was the distraction he used to avoid the truth. Saving forced him to confront it. And confronting it would mean taking responsibility, which is the one thing most people are never ready to do. But the first 20,000 demand responsibility. To reach that amount, you must break patterns that have shaped you for years. You must stop buying things to impress people. Stop escaping boredom with purchases. Stop confusing luxury with progress. You must learn to sit with discomfort instead of trying to buy your way out of it. And most importantly, you must accept that nobody is coming to save you. No miracle, no luck, no perfect moment. Just you, your choices, and the quiet effort you repeat day after day. That is why this milestone is transformative. It forces you to become the kind of person who does not run from discipline, but grows stronger because of it. Reaching 20,000 is not about money rising in your account. It is about the noise inside you finally fading. It is about realizing that control is not something you wait for. It is something you build. Once that understanding becomes part of you, the game stops feeling impossible. The path becomes clear. And for the first time, you see that the only person who ever stood between you and financial stability was the one staring back at you in the mirror. The reason your first $20,000 change everything has less to do with numbers and more to do with psychology. Humans love to believe money is a math problem, but the truth is that money is a behavior problem. It is emotional, irrational, and deeply tied to identity. Before you ever save a dollar, you must fight battles inside your own mind. You must confront the part of you that believes you are not capable, not disciplined, not consistent, or not the type of person who becomes financially stable. And that is exactly why the journey to 20,000 is so transformative. It forces you to challenge every belief that kept you broke. People assume financial change begins when they start earning more. It doesn't. It begins when you start thinking differently. When every purchase becomes a decision instead of a reaction. When you stop using money to escape emotions and start using it to build your future. Humans spend because they are stressed, bored, lonely, anxious, or trying to fill some empty space they never talk about. They call it treating themselves. But treating yourself should not mean weakening your life. The first 20,000 show you that most of your spending never came from need. It came from habit and emotion. And breaking those patterns is what creates your new identity. Back on the farm, I noticed something strange. The people who lived broke were not the ones with the lowest income. They were the ones who believed their money problems were permanent. They acted like prisoners of their own bank accounts, locked inside a story they repeated so many times it became their truth. But the people who escaped that cycle did something different. They stopped believing in limitations. They stopped telling themselves, "I can't save," and replaced it with, "I just haven't learned how yet." With that simple shift, their entire behavior changed. They began to plan instead of guess. They began to build instead of react. They became intentional. That is the psychological power of the first 20,000. It destroys the old version of you. The version that gives up easily. The version that confuses pleasure with progress. The version that sees money as a dream instead of a tool. Saving that amount proves that you can control your impulses, that you can delay gratification, and that you can create stability instead of chaos. It is the moment you stop feeling like life is happening to you and start realizing you can design your future. That shift, more than the money itself, is what changes everything. Because once you become the person capable of saving 20,000, the rest of the journey stops being a fantasy and becomes the new standard of who you are. Discipline is the silent engine behind every dollar you save, and it is the exact reason most people never reach their first 20,000. Humans love motivation because it feels good. They love inspiration because it gives them hope. But discipline is uncomfortable, repetitive, and painfully honest. It forces you to face the truth that your life is shaped not by what you dream about, but by what you do consistently, even when you do not feel like doing it. And that is why the first 20,000 demand a level of discipline that reshapes your entire identity. You do not stumble into this milestone. You build it with hundreds of quiet decisions no one sees. Discipline is not loud or dramatic. It is not the grand gesture of saying you will change your life. It is the quiet choice you make each day when no one is watching. It is packing your lunch instead of buying another impulsive meal. It is resisting the urge to upgrade something that still works perfectly. It is closing the shopping tab instead of convincing yourself you earned it. It is choosing long-term peace over short-term excitement. Most humans hate these decisions because they feel small and insignificant. But those small decisions form the backbone of your transformation. When you stack enough disciplined moments together, they change the trajectory of your entire financial life. Back on the farm, I learned discipline the hard way. Day after day, task after task, whether I felt like it or not. There was no applause for showing up, no reward for consistency, no praise for doing the work. It was normal, it was expected. Humans, however, want recognition for every tiny effort. They want the world to congratulate them simply for not sabotaging themselves for one day. But building 20,000 requires far more than a moment of effort. It requires routine. It requires habits that stay steady even when your emotions swing wildly. And that is exactly why this milestone is so transformative. It forces you to behave like the person you want, to become long before you see any proof that it is working. Saving your first 20,000 teaches you a truth most people never understand. Discipline is not about restriction. It is about protection. It protects your future from your impulses. It protects your freedom from your excuses. It protects your stability from every careless decision that used to drain your account. When discipline becomes part of you, money stops slipping through your fingers. You stop chasing every desire that appears. You stop feeling controlled by your emotions. Instead, you become someone who creates direction, structure, and progress. The first 20,000 reveal that discipline is not the sacrifice most people fear. It is the doorway to a life where you finally feel in control. Reaching your first $20,000 does not happen by accident. It is built through habits so simple most people underestimate them. and so powerful they reshape your financial destiny. Humans love complicated strategies because they make them feel smarter. They look for secret investments, hidden formulas, magic shortcuts. But the real foundation of financial change is built through boring consistency. Small actions repeated without fail. Quiet choices that compound over time. The habits that create 20,000 are not flashy, but they are unstoppable. The first habit is clarity. You must know exactly where your money goes. Not vaguely, not occasionally, but fully. Most humans are terrified of looking at their own expenses because deep down they know the truth. They are the ones draining their accounts. They avoid the numbers to avoid the responsibility. But when you track every dollar, something shifts inside you. You stop lying to yourself. You stop pretending you don't know where the money went. You finally see the leaks, the patterns, the emotional purchases disguised as needs. And with that clarity comes control, because you can only change what you are willing to confront. Pause. Second habit is automation. Humans believe discipline means relying on willpower, but willpower is fragile and unpredictable. Automation removes the emotional decision from the process. When your savings leave your account before you ever see them, you stop negotiating with yourself. You stop deciding if you will save and simply accept that it is already done. This turns saving into something natural rather than something forced, and it is one of the strongest habits you can build. When your money moves without your permission, your progress becomes inevitable. The third habit is intentional spending. This does not mean depriving yourself or living miserably. It means choosing with purpose. Instead of buying because you feel like it, you buy because it aligns with your goals. Every purchase becomes a conscious choice instead of a reaction to emotion. You begin to treat money as a resource, not a toy. You stop chasing the thrill of buying and start valuing the security of keeping. Over time, your relationship with money transforms. You begin to feel powerful instead of guilty, strategic instead of impulsive, confident instead of anxious. And those feelings build momentum. Back on the farm, I saw a simple truth. What you repeat becomes who you are. The worker who wasted time each day became the one who never succeeded. The one who showed up with discipline, even in silence, built a reputation of strength. Money works the same way. Your habits tell your future where to go. If your habits are scattered, your financial life becomes chaos. If your habits are intentional, your financial life becomes predictable and stable. Saving your first 20,000 forces your habits to grow faster than your excuses. And once those habits take root, they keep paying you long after the money is in your account. The first $20,000 are the slowest money you will ever save. Every dollar feels like a battle, every decision feels like a sacrifice, and every step feels like progress measured in inches. But once you cross that mark, something strange happens. The process speeds up. The growth accelerates. The effort feels lighter. Not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. The discipline, habits, and clarity that once felt difficult become automatic. What used to drain your energy now requires almost none. That is the momentum effect, and it is exactly why your first 20,000 can change everything. Momentum begins with identity. Before reaching 20,000, you still feel like someone trying to be financially responsible. After reaching it, you feel like someone who is financially responsible. That shift is powerful. It changes how you think about spending, saving, and investing. You stop questioning whether you can do it and start expecting results from yourself. You begin to treat money like a tool rather than a source of stress. Confidence replaces confusion, and direction replaces desperation. What once required discipline now requires intention. Momentum also appears in your financial stability. With 20,000 saved, you are no longer vulnerable to every minor disruption. Emergencies lose their ability to destroy your progress. You no longer need to rely on credit cards, loans, or desperate choices. You operate from a position of strength rather than fear. This stability gives you the freedom to make smarter decisions, the decisions that grow your wealth faster. You can invest consistently. You can take opportunities you once couldn't. You can build without worrying that one mistake will break you. This is how momentum multiplies your progress. But momentum is not just psychological or financial. It is emotional. Before reaching 20,000, saving feels like sacrifice. After reaching it, saving feels like success. Each additional dollar becomes proof of your growth, not punishment for your restraint. You start to enjoy the process because it reflects the person you have become. You begin to take pride in your consistency. You feel capable. You feel aware. You feel in control. And for the first time, you realize that money is not the reward. The person you became while saving it is the real victory. Back on the farm, I saw this in the simplest way. The first step, pulling a heavy cart, was always the hardest. The wheels resisted, the weight felt unbearable, and the effort felt enormous. But once the wheels were moving, everything changed. The same load felt lighter, the same path felt easier, and every step carried more distance. Progress became natural. Humans forget this truth. They quit during the hardest part, right before the momentum kicks in. But if they pushed long enough to reach those first 20,000, they would discover that what once felt impossible becomes inevitable. That is the true power of momentum. It rewards the few who stay long enough to feel it. Most people talk about money only in terms of material things, what they can buy, what they can show, what they can flex online. But your first $20,000 are not about possessions. They are about freedom. Not the fantasy version humans imagine, traveling the world, buying expensive toys, or living without limits, but the real kind of freedom. The ability to make choices without fear. The ability to breathe. The ability to stop living in survival mode. When you reach 20,000, you experience a level of peace you might not have felt in years. It is the first time life stops feeling like a constant emergency. Financial freedom does not start at $1 million. It starts at the moment you are no longer one crisis away from disaster. Before 20,000, every unexpected expense feels like a threat. A car problem, a medical bill, a broken laptop. These things have the power to derail your entire life. They shake your confidence, break your plans, and push you into debt that drags you down for months or even years. But with 20,000 saved, the same event becomes manageable. Inconvenient, yes, but not catastrophic. You no longer panic. You respond. That difference alone is worth more than anything money can buy. This freedom also changes how you view opportunities. When you have nothing saved, even good opportunities look risky. You hesitate. You delay. You watch chances pass because you cannot afford to take a step forward. But with 20,000, you finally have room to move. You can invest. You can take calculated risks. You can learn new skills without worrying that the cost will ruin you. You can walk away from toxic jobs, bad deals, and situations that drain your life. You are no longer trapped by necessity. You can choose based on strategy instead of survival. That power is the beginning of real wealth. And then comes the emotional freedom. The one humans never talk about because they are too busy pretending everything is fine. When you reach 20,000, the constant tension in your chest begins to fade. The anxiety that used to live in the back of your mind grows quiet. You no longer feel ashamed when thinking about money. You no longer feel like life is slipping through your fingers. For the first time, you feel capable, prepared, and grounded. Your self-respect grows because you know you earned that stability through effort, discipline, and consistency. And that confidence stays with you long after you pass the 20,000 mark. Back on the farm, I learned that real freedom is not the absence of work. It is the absence of fear. The donkey with no food stored for winter does not sleep. He worries, he panics, he survives day by day. But the donkey who prepared ahead of time walks with confidence, not because his life is easier, but because his effort gave him room to breathe. Saving your first 20,000 gives you that same strength. It does not solve every problem, but it removes the constant fear that once controlled your decisions. And when fear stops driving your life, everything becomes possible. There is a moment in every financial journey when everything changes, but it rarely comes with fanfare or celebration. It happens quietly, almost invisibly, the day you stop thinking like someone who is trying to survive and start thinking like someone who is building. Saving your first $20,000 forces this shift, because the discipline you use to reach that level reshapes the way you interpret the world. Instead of reacting to life, you begin designing it. Instead of guessing, you begin planning. Instead of hoping, you begin executing with intention. This is the mindset shift that turns financial progress from an impossible dream into an inevitable outcome. Before reaching 20,000, every financial decision feels heavy. You question yourself constantly. You wonder if it is worth the effort. You doubt your ability to stay consistent. Fear makes every choice feel bigger than it is. But after building this foundation, something changes inside you. You no longer fear the numbers. You no longer panic at the thought of saving or investing. You begin viewing money as a system instead of a mystery. The emotional weight that once clouded your judgment disappears, and what remains is clarity. You understand that wealth is not a destination. It is a pattern of behavior repeated over a lifetime. This mindset shift also changes your relationship with time. Humans who are stuck in survival mode think only about immediate relief. They crave comfort today because tomorrow feels uncertain. But once you reach 20,000, tomorrow becomes real. You can see it, you can plan for it, you can design it. You stop needing instant gratification because you finally trust your ability to create long-term results. You begin to understand that patience is not suffering, it is strategy. And when patience becomes strategy, your progress multiplies. Another powerful change is the way you view opportunities. Before 20,000, opportunities look dangerous. They feel like risks you cannot afford to take. But after reaching that amount, you gain perspective. You see that opportunities are not threats, they are tools. Tools that can accelerate your growth if you use them wisely. You start evaluating chances based on logic instead of fear. You learn to differentiate between distractions and investments. Most importantly, you stop chasing everything and start choosing what aligns with the future you want to build. Back on the farm. I saw this shift all the time. Some workers spent their lives trying to make it through each day. They never looked beyond the moment. Their world was just the next meal, the next task, the next weekend. But the ones who planned ahead, who thought beyond the immediate, built lives that grew, expanded, and strengthened over time. They became leaders because they stopped playing the survival game and started playing the building game. Saving 20,000 gives you that same transition. It is the line between who you were and who you are becoming. This new mindset makes everything easier. Saving becomes natural. Investing becomes exciting. Growth becomes expected. You no longer doubt yourself because your progress is no longer fragile. You stop chasing stability and start expanding it. That is the power of the mindset shift. It transforms wealth from something you want into something you create. When you cross the threshold of your first $20,000, you do not just change your financial situation, you change your identity. The person who struggled, hesitated, doubted, and feared, the future begins to fade. In their place emerges someone sharper, calmer, more deliberate, more powerful. Someone who understands the connection between discipline and freedom. Someone who realizes that stability is not built by chance, but by character. And this new version of you becomes the foundation of every dollar you earn from this point forward. Life after 20,000 feels different. Not because everything becomes easy, but because nothing feels impossible anymore. You stop panicking every time the unexpected happens. You stop fighting with yourself over every financial decision. You stop feeling like life is slipping away from you. Instead, you navigate problems with confidence because you know you have structure, preparation, and direction. Money no longer controls you. You control it. And that sense of control transforms how you show up in every area of your life, your work, your relationships, your ambitions, your future. With 20,000 saved, you also gain a new level of respect for yourself. You understand the weight of your effort. You recognize the strength it took to change your habits, confront your impulses, and stay consistent even when progress felt slow. You realize that every sacrifice had a purpose. Every decision built momentum. Every disciplined moment carved a stronger version of you. This self-respect becomes fuel. It makes you unwilling to sabotage yourself again. It raises your standards, not just with money, but with the life you choose to build. And now the real journey begins. The next 30,000 come faster. Then the next 50. Then the first 100. The process becomes smoother because you are no longer dragging the weight of confusion, fear, and bad habits. You understand the system. You trust the system. You know that wealth is not an accident. It is the predictable result of discipline, intention, and consistency. You become someone who makes decisions with clarity rather than emotion. Someone who invests with strategy rather than impulse. Someone who builds with patience rather than desperation. Back on the farm, I saw that once a cart begins to move, it keeps moving unless something stops it. The same happens here. Once you build the version of yourself who can save 20,000, momentum pushes you forward. The only thing that can stop you now is you going back to the old habits you fought so hard to escape. But you will not. Because you understand the cost of going backward. You understand the value of moving forward. And you understand, finally, that wealth begins long before the money arrives. It begins inside you. You are no longer surviving. You are building. You are no longer guessing. You are choosing. You are no longer hoping. You are creating. The first 20,000 were the test. The rest of your life is the reward.